Hello everyone and welcome back to Nather and Deer's Guide to Everything, and welcome back to the Legend Forge. Today we've got a fantastic episode for you. We're going to be covering Noctis from Final Fantasy 15. In case you're new here, the Legend Forge is a series where we take pop culture characters, so from video games, TV shows, movies, and we try and mold them into the D&D format the best we can using homebrew items and the tools available to us on D&D Beyond, my tool of choice. Don't forget to like and comment and subscribe if you are new around here and you enjoy the content. I really appreciate all the support. The subs are rocketing up. I'm just really excited to get some community posts going and do some giveaways and stuff, all coming at 1,000 subs when we get access to that kind of thing. But without further ado, this is the second time I've recorded this video because the first one did corrupt, so I know it's a long one, so we're just going to go straight into it. I'll see you on the other side.
How many must die before you are satisfied?
I have seen many deaths, but now I'm only looking forward to one.
Fantastic, so I hope you enjoyed that. Welcome back to D&D Beyond, and we're going to head over to my characters. And this was a subscriber request for this particular character build, so if you want to see a character build, please leave it in the comments below and I will try to get to it eventually. So we've turned on the homebrew content, we've turned off multi-class requirements for our race, we've gone for a standard human. Noctis is pretty good at almost everything, to be honest with you, so the +1 across the board really suits his character. We've gone for Celestial as the language of choice due to the fact that he often converses with astrals and gods and crazy other creatures, basically. But again, languages in D&D are hard to translate to other medium, really. But class-wise, we've gone for 2 classes, and we start with a Warlock. Hit points 1d8. Proficiencies, we get saving throws in Wisdom and Charisma, light armor, and simple weapons. Doesn't matter though, because we've got some in Fighter. We get Arcana and Nature as the proficiencies that I've chosen. Our otherworldly patron is the Hexblade, which gives us a melee-focused build. And our Pact Magic is, if you don't know how Warlocks work, they get short rest spells essentially, but much less spell slots to actually use. We'll actually only have 2 Pact Magic slots available in our full build. We make up for it elsewhere, don't worry. We do have access to Hexblade's Curse, which gives us the ability to place a curse on a creature within 30 feet as a bonus action. I would imagine this as a buff or scanning a creature in Final Fantasy so that you know what their weaknesses are and things. We gain bonus damage rolls against the cursed target. The bonus equals our proficiency bonus. Any attack roll you make against the cursed target is a critical hit on a 19 or 20. Incredible. And if they die, we regain some hit points. As a Hexblade as well, we also get Hex Warrior to move in with this as well. We can effectively arm ourselves in battle. We get proficiency with medium armor, shields, and martial weapons. Whenever we finish a long rest, we can touch one weapon that we are proficient with that lacks the two-handed property. And when you attack with that weapon, you can use your charisma modifier instead of your strength or dexterity for the attack and damage rolls. We're not going to make too much use of this as in this particular build of Noctis, but it's still really good regardless. Our Eldritch Invocations, I would change these. Basically, I'm going to use the Eldritch Blast as essentially us throwing a sword and then warping it back to us. You do a lot of that with Noctis, teleporting around. That's kind of his main, I guess, gimmick. The gimmick for the game is these warp strike features and his ability to move around the battlefield really, really quickly. So with that in mind, we've gone for an Agonizing Blast, so we deal more damage with our Eldritch Blast, and Repelling Blast as well, so we can push them 10 feet away should we decide to use maybe a heavier weapon when we throw it towards the enemy. We've also got Eldritch Smite, which is a 5th level Pact of the Blade feature, and once per turn we hit a creature with our Pact weapon, you can spend a Warlock spell slot to do an extra 1d8 force damage, plus another 1d8 per level of the spell slot. And they're always cast at the highest level as a Warlock anyway. You can also knock the target prone if they're huge or small, pretty massive. Our Pact Boon, as mentioned, would be Pact of the Blade, and our ability score improvements are a double into Charisma. Moving on now, we've got some Eldritch Knight Fighter, 15 levels in fact, to round out this class, which gives us proficiencies where we didn't have them. We've gone for dueling, so while we're medium melee weapon, in one hand and no other weapons, you get a +2 damage rolls with that weapon. As you can see, they always have one sword over the shoulder usually in Final Fantasy. We get Action Surge, which means we can take another action on our turn, making us very deadly in combat. And then we have our martial archetype of Eldritch Knight, which gives us spellcasting tied to our intelligence as opposed to our charisma with our warlocks. We're a bit multi-ability dependent here. We can create a weapon bond very similar to what you can do with a Hexblade, summoning the sword and things. We can perform a ritual over Corso now, which can be done during a short rest. When we touch a weapon, we can bond ourselves to it and we can't be disarmed of it, which is bloody good. And you can have up to 2 at a time. You can summon it as a bonus action on our turn, should we not have it out already. Ability score improvement the first time around, we've actually gone for a feat here. We've gone for Warcaster, which gives us advantage on con saves to maintain concentration on a spell. We can perform somatic components even if we've got things in both hands. And when a hostile creature's movement provokes opportunity attack, we can use a spell instead. Fantastic all across the board for everything we do. At 5th level we get an extra attack. At 6th level we've gone for a boost to charisma and intelligence. At 7th level we get war magic. When we use our action to cast a cantrip, we can make one weapon attack as a bonus action. Just the martial prowess of this guy is unparalleled, and you can see that in some of the gameplay if you've played the game anyway. So ability score improvement at level 8, we went for double into intelligence. At level 9 we get Indomitable, so we can re-roll a saving throw should we fail one. And Eldritch Strike, we can undercut a creature's resistances to our spells. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, that creature has disadvantage on the next saving throw it makes against the spell you cast before the end of your next turn. So incredible. Whatever effect we try and suscept them to, so if we hit them once on the first turn and then we cast Fireball, they have disadvantage on the dexterity saving throw on the next turn. At 11th level we get our extra attack, and that will be our final extra attack, so 3 attacks total in this particular build. Ability score improvement, a Constitution and Intelligence. And for ability score improvement at level 14, we've gone for 2 dips into Dexterity, just to take it up to the maximum. If I was rebuilding this, I'd probably put the double into Dexterity more towards the start, just to make sure your martial prowess is on point. But because we're just making a 20th level character out the gate, doesn't really matter at this point. At 15th level we get an Arcane Charge, which is a fantastic feature I'd never heard of before. We gain the ability to teleport 30 feet to an unoccupied space. You can see when you use your action surge. It can be before or after the additional action. So really good. If you happen to lay into an enemy three times and they die, you can then action surge, teleport 30 feet and appear in front of someone else. Fits perfectly with Noctis, and that's why I went for the 15 levels in Fighter. You could argue for some levels in Ranger, but I think for me this just seemed to fit perfectly, and I've filled in all the gaps with Homebrew. So without further ado, ability scores first. We have a priority into Dexterity and Strength. This is a very physical guy, and then on the mental stats afterwards. We've gone for Intelligence of 13, Wisdom of 13, Charisma of 14, with a Constitution of 10, and they are rolled stats. As you can see there, I rolled really well. Good stats across the board. Definitely his weakest would be Constitution, and that is to mimic the fact that in the game you use the Armjar Arsenal, and when you attack something with your special abilities, as it were, you take damage as well. So kind of leaning into that, him having low con there. I guess for an optimal build you would probably want more con, but again we're not doing that, we're making a character from a game. But description, we went for Noble. We've got proficiency with History, Persuasion, playing card set, and a language of Abyssal, because you encounter a lot of demons in Final Fantasy. Now swiftly moving into the character sheet, and this is where the bulk of the content is today. We have a lot to get through. So it's first worth mentioning there are 2 kind of magics in Final Fantasy, the ring magic and elemancy, which are the ones discussed in Final Fantasy 15. Anyway, ring magic comes into play when you get the Ring of Lucii, a powerful artifact item in that game. But other than that, we do have access to elemancy, and the spells I've chosen are focused on the elements and teleporting, because his maneuverability is absolutely insane in the game. So we've gone for Booming Blade, Eldritch Blast, Firebolt, Ray of Frost, Shocking Grasp and Sword Burst as our cantrips for this particular class. You can see a focus there on elemental status effects, as well as Eldritch Blast being disguised as a sword throw, I would argue. First level, we've also got Absorb Elements, Chromatic Orb, Ice Knife and Witch Bolt. Witch Bolt deals lightning damage over time, really good. You could say you apply a status effect to something. Absorb Elements is just very useful if we're hit by a spell. Chromatic Orb can deal all elemental damage basically, so why wouldn't we want that? And then we go into a few more spells. Some Warlock ones will appear here as well. We're trying not to get hit as much as we can, and you'll see why in a bit. One, because our con is low, but a lot of our ability to drain our own health, kind of like a blood hunter as well. So at second level we've got Blur prepared, which would be a fantastic one to get up at the start of a fight. We've got Mirror Image, we've got Misty Step twice should we need it, because Warlock and Fighter spell slots. We've got Scorching Ray, nice fire spell. Shadow Blade should we need it. We should probably always have a weapon on us, and I imagine that would be the most optimal way to use it, but should we ever be disarmed, we do have a Shadow Blade as a backup, which we can just summon out of our fist, basically. At third level we've prepared Blink, Fireball, Haste, Spirit Shroud, and Thunderstep. Thunderstep teleports. Spirit Shroud, because within the game when you summon the Armjar you have this kind of shield around you. I figured this would basically perfect look like that, and you would change the style of this. It wouldn't call forth the spirits of the dead. I would say it would be the royal arms from the game, these spiritual weapons that float around you. Haste is just incredible. Why wouldn't we want haste? More movement speed, more actions, just amazing. Obviously Fireball, high damaging fire spell. And Blink, we can teleport out of existence at the end of our turn. Incredible. So you can see all our statistics, nothing too crazy. I've whacked some studded leather on him, but I would say honestly I don't remember wearing armor at all in the game. I just remember wearing like a really fancy suit with a few metal bits on it, like buckles and stuff. So you could argue for just leather or just plain studded leather armor. I've gone for a +2 just to make it a bit more zhuzhy, because by end game you probably would have something pretty good. It's about time we got into the meat of this, I think, and we'll go through the items I've created for Noctis. So first up, the Ultima Blade, which is the ultimate blade that you can, I guess, craft within Final Fantasy, and it comes from the Engine Blade, which is a blade you get right at the start of the game. You can get this fairly easily as well. This is the ultimate sword crafted with Insomnian technology. It absorbs elemental powers of defeated foes. Its blade is alloyed a metallic blue, with its engine finished in gold and its internal crystal components glowing red. It's a +3 magical weapon and has the following features. This magic weapon gains the finesse property and can be wielded in one hand, but you must have your other hand free, and it is a great sword. So this would be a giant sword over one shoulder, wieldable with one hand. Really fun. Elemental absorption. When you reduce a creature to 0 hit points with this weapon, you can absorb some of their residual energy, which is then transferred into the next successful melee attack. When you reduce a creature to 0 hit points, roll a d8 and consult the table below. An elemental creature would grant their elemental bonus automatically, like a fire elemental, for example, would give you fire. But that means we can deal all the elements in the game with a few bonus ones in there, putting force in there as well, radiant and necrotic, just to round it out, just so that's always an option, because a lot of things resist fire and cold and things like that. It's an extra 2d6 damage basically on every attack, so it's a 4d6 weapon out the gate with all the pluses on that. And now there is one other weapon that I thought I'd give an honourable mention to, so I just decided to just make it instead. The Balmung, which is the highest attack stat sword in the game as far as I'm aware. Don't crucify me if that's wrong, but I think that's right from my research. Initially the sword delivers devastating harm, but as the wielder's magical energies decline, so does the blade's lethality. It's a +3 weapon. It has the same finesse property as the other one, just to live the Final Fantasy dream. Great sword over one shoulder, but its arcane devastation feature is the bread and butter here. If you have all of your spell slots available, this weapon is more deadly. When you make a melee attack against a creature on a hit, you deal additional force damage equal to the number of spell slots you have available. For example, if you have 3 first level spell slots and 1 third, you would deal an additional 4 force damage. So at the moment we've got like 11, so it would be like +11 to every attack. But then I would hope that you'd be in a tough enough encounter where you'd need to use spells at some point, but then this would drain the power of this particular item. And then we're going to go into some of the summons that you can do in the game. Now these started out as feats, but I couldn't figure out a way to make them work how I wanted with D&D Beyond, so they've had to become items, unfortunately. Clogging up the inventory a bit here, but not the end of the world. I'm sure you can deal with it. And they usually only come when the fight isn't going your way, or it's been going on for a long period of time. So I've tried to build that into all of them. They all have very similar summoning effects. So to first even obtain the Astral Mark of the Titan, your DM needs to put you through a trial, maybe fighting a particular giant creature or fighting them themselves. This should be a huge challenge. But if you pass the trial and you now bear the mark, the Astral Mark of the Arcane Titan, you can summon him to intervene in a time of need. If one or more of your allies die in battle, that is, completely dead, as an action you can roll a d100 and an even number the Titan appears. An ethereal presence of an astral entity, you can cast a Meteor Swarm spell using your spell save DC. But if you use any astral entity, you can't use another Astral Mark again for 7 days. If it fails, you can attempt to use it again after you finish a long rest. So it's a last-ditch effort to save yourself, basically, and they all have that effect, so I won't read that one moving forwards. Next up, we do have Rama. I believe is the one, the order you unlock them in the game is Rama next, the god of the storms. You can summon Rama to intervene in a time of need on the 4th or any subsequent round of a combat encounter. As an action, you can roll a d100 on an odd number. Rama appears, and you can cast the Chain Lightning spell at 9th level. Absolutely monstrous. Moving swiftly on, we have the Mark of the Leviathan. If you drop below 10 hit points and you're within 2 miles of a body of water, you roll a d100 on an even number, it appears, floods a large area as your DM would decide. You can cast the Cone of Cold spell at 9th level, changing the damage type to bludgeoning as the spell is altered to cast a powerful stream of water, or you can cast Control Water using your spell save DC. So a bit of utility as well as just damage should you need it. Don't have access to the Tidal Wave spell because all the spells you include in Homebrew have to be in the basic rules, and Tidal Wave is not, unfortunately, otherwise I would have included it here rather than Cone of Cold. Astral Mark of Shiva, the Glacian Shiva. If 2 or more of your allies are unconscious, as an action, roll d100 on an odd number. You can cast Freezing Sphere or Wall of Ice at a 9th level. Incredible. She is this god of ice, an ice queen as it were. Fantastic animations within game, absolutely love them, but yeah, really, really fun. And finally, the king of the dragons, and in D&D as well, Bahamut, the draconian Bahamut, can intervene in a time of need. If 1 or more of your allies are unconscious in an encounter with a legendary creature, specifically one with legendary resistances, as an action you can roll a d100 on an even number. Bahamut appears. You can immediately cast Mordenkainen's Sword and Blade Barrier simultaneously using your spell save DC. The Blade Barrier spell does not require concentration and lasts for the duration unless dispelled or dismissed by you. And within the game, Bahamut only appears in one fight, I believe, towards the end of the game. Spoilers, Final Fantasy 15 came out years ago, I'm sure it's fine. Basically sends swords flying down from the sky. So the Blade Barrier, rather than like this ghostly aspect of a wall of swords, I would flavour this as gigantic swords fly in from the heavens. Really, really cool. Like I said, none of them can be used more than once in any 7-day period. Next up, we have the access to the ring magic that Noctis gets, and this is kind of the darker side of it. This is the ring of his bloodline, basically. Harbouring the souls of Lucian rulers of old, the ring allows its wearer to channel the power of the crystal, but drains one's life away. Handed down through the Lucian line for generations, only those of royal blood may wear it. And that is part of the attunement process as well. Oh, by the way, the other 2 swords are attunable, as well as the Ring of Lucia and the Armjar Arsenal, which we'll get to in a second. But ring magic, using the feature of this ring can take a toll on the body. Over time, your DM may decide that consistent usage has detrimental effects to you, or such as permanent arcane scarring or susceptibility to particular damage types. More examples of minor and major detrimental magical effects can be found in Chapter 7 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. So that is up to you how you'd like to use this. But this follows the Vestige of Divergence, where this would be an item that you acquire early-ish, and it levels up throughout your playthrough with the game. You unlock the Death ability to drain the life force of your enemies in its dormant state. As an action, you can cast the Disintegrate spell, DC 18. If the targeted creature takes damage from the spell and survives, and you are below half of your maximum hit points, you heal until you're exactly half of your maximum. If the creature dies, you must make a con save DC 10 or gain 1 level of exhaustion. Can't be used again until the next dawn. In its awakened state, so a few levels later this would be, you get access to the holy power of this. Smite foes with sacred energy. As a reaction, if a creature misses a melee attack against you, you can immediately make a melee attack against it. On a hit, the target takes 5d8 radiant damage in addition to the weapon's damage. Additionally, each hostile creature other than the target within 15 feet must succeed on a dex save DC 18 or take 2d8 themselves. If you use this feature, it's a con save of DC 11 or you gain 1 level of exhaustion. If you use this feature, it cannot be used again till the next dawn. And in its final state, along with all the others, you gain the Alterna ability. gain the ability to temporarily break the fabric of reality. As an action, you can cast a banishment spell DC 20. If the creature succeeds on the saving throw, they still take 8d10 cold damage instead. While concentrating on this spell, you have advantage on Constitution saving throws to maintain concentration. So that is in the case that if you put this in your game and you're not playing Noctis and you don't follow my build and you don't have Warcaster, you still get the ability to concentrate. If you successfully maintain concentration on this spell for its full duration, you must make a con save DC 12 or gain 1 level of exhaustion. Now, the big item, the one I spent a long time, which is why this video is late by my schedule. We've got the Armjar Arsenal, and actually you can see it doesn't actually fit on the right hand side here, so if you use this item you will have to just open it fully within your homebrew on a different page, because there's so much here. I followed a template of an item called the Teeth of Dalvenar, and it had like a table along the bottom. Only then did I realise once I got into D&D Beyond, neither of them display properly, so that would be something for D&D Beyond maybe down the line to expand the window if there's a table. But regardless, I've got it open up here. So, the Armjar Arsenal, also known as the Power of Kings, is the means to summon the royal arms. Special weapons fit for a king, each boasting its own unique properties. A gift passed from one to another through the bonding of souls. Particularly powerful weapons that you go out into the world and you find, and it buffs your abilities, gives you access to loads of new abilities. You can summon them on the fly, but rather than make like 12 or 13 weapons, I figured I'd try and squidge them all into one arcane item with some really fun effects built in. So attunement. To attune to this, the creature that is currently attuned must be willing to pass on the gift to you through an hour-long ritual. If the ritual is successful, you become attuned to the arsenal. You cannot remove this attunement without finding another creature to pass the gift to. When you attune to the Armjar Arsenal, all of the royal arms may not have been assembled and may still need to be found. Your DM will tell you which royal arms you have access to when you find it, when you discover this particular artifact. Upon death, if you die while attuned to the Armjar Arsenal, its power fades over 1d12 days, at the end of which the attunement ends and all the royal arms gathered will scatter, hiding in places of power, awaiting to be assembled once more. Using the Armjar. Each royal arm is a spectral magical weapon that exists in your space and grants you its benefits until the end of your next turn. Once a royal arm has been summoned, it cannot be summoned again until the next dawn. Track which royal arms have been used. While you are attuned to the Armjar Arsenal, you can use a bonus action to summon a royal arm of your choice and gain its passive feature. If you do, you lose a number of hit points equal to one roll of the cost die, as shown in the cost column of the table below. You can choose to use the active feature of a royal arm on the same turn at no additional cost unless specified. If you decide to use the active feature of a royal arm on your following turn, you have to pay the cost die, one roll of it. The Armjar Arsenal also gives you the ability to Warp Strike. As part of an attack action, you can target a creature within 30 feet of you and teleport to an unoccupied space within 5 feet of the target. On a successful hit, they take an additional 1d8 force damage. If you use this feature, you lose a number of hit points equal to the bonus force damage dealt by the Warp Strikes. There is always a cost to having this kind of power. So now, down into the table, each weapon has a passive and active ability. I will go into both. For a cost of 1d8, you can summon the Sword of the Wise. Passively, it gives you 15 temporary hit points. Actively, this royal arm creates a protective 15-foot sphere influence around you, and when a creature enters the area for the first time or starts its turn there, the sword warps to them, dealing 2d8 force damage. Really good, really protective, really powerful over a couple of turns. All of these abilities, by the way, are designed from what I could gather, what they did in the game. I have forgotten since I played it many years ago. But yeah, they're all designed, they should mimic, if you've played the game, they should mimic some of the things you can do there. But for 2d8, the cost, you can summon the Axe of the Conqueror. If you hit a creature with a melee attack while this royal arm is active, they take additional force damage equal to your strength modifier. Actively, when you make a melee attack against a creature, on a hit you can choose to weaken the target. The next time you or an ally of yours hits the weakened creature with an attack, the creature has vulnerability to all of that attack's damage, and then the weakened state ends. For 1d8 you can summon the Sword of the Wanderer. Your walking/movement speed increases by 20 feet. When you make a melee attack against a creature on a hit, you can change any damage you deal to thunder instead. If you do, your movement does not provoke opportunity attacks until the end of your turn. 1d10, the Blade of the Mystic. You gain resistance to necrotic damage and have advantage on strength ability checks and saving throws. Actively, your reach becomes 10 feet until the end of your turn. Additionally, when you make a melee attack against a creature, on a hit you can target up to 3 creatures within 30 feet of you. They each take 1d8 force damage. Then you can teleport to an unoccupied space within 5 feet of one of those targets. This is a really fun one. I remember in the game, you hit something and it's like 3 beams spread out hit things in the area. Really, really good. For 2d4, you can summon the Star of the Rogue, little shurikens. You gain resistance to fire, ice, and lightning damage while this is active. That's passively. Actively, you can target up to as many creatures you can see within 60 feet, equal to the amount of damage taken from the cost of the Royal Arm. When you do this, targeted creatures are struck by a magical shuriken, each take 3d4 piercing damage for each projectile they're hit by. If you choose only one target and they are hit by at least 3 projectiles, they have disadvantage on dexterity saving throws, and if they are size large or smaller, their movement speed is halved until the end of their next turn. For 2d6, you can summon the Sword of the Tall. You gain 25 temporary hit points and vulnerability to fire, ice, lightning, and necrotic damage. I mean, a bit exposed there. But actively, when you make a melee attack against a creature on a hit, you deal an additional 2d6 slashing damage, and your weapon attacks score a critical hit on an 18, 19, and 20. For a cost of 1d10, you can summon the Mace of the Fierce. You gain 20 temporary hit points and vulnerability to piercing damage. When you make a melee attack against a creature on a hit, if they are size large or smaller, they are knocked prone. Additionally, any other damage you deal becomes bludgeoning instead while this effect is active. Some really interesting things could come out of that. For 1d10, you can summon the Bow of the Clever. You have resistance to piercing damage, and your spells that deal additional damage equal to your proficiency bonus. As an action, you can will the Royal Arm to rain down arrows from above. Within 90 feet of you, you can target as many creatures as you can see, up to your character's level. They each take 2d8 piercing damage, very good at crowd clearance. 2d8, you can access the Scepter of the Pious, and passively this gives you necrotic resistance. If you hit a creature with a melee attack while this Royal Arm is active, they take additional force damage equal to your spellcasting modifier. Actively, you can mimic any other Royal Arm's active feature. For 2d10, you can summon the Shield of the Just. You regain 40 hit points. Regain, not temporary. You regain and have resistance to all damage types. As an action, this Royal Arm can bolster you and your allies within 30 feet of you. Choose up to 6 creatures within range. They can roll up to 2 hit die if they have them available, and gain 3/4 cover while the Royal Arm is active. A target with 3/4 cover has +5 bonus to AC and dexterity saving throws. Additionally, when you're subjected to an effect that allows you to make a dex saving throw, you take half damage instead if you fail, and none on a success. Really, really powerful. Almost there. 2d8, the Katana of the Warrior. You gain resistance to fire, ice, and lightning damage. You gain vulnerability to necrotic damage. If you hit a creature with a melee attack while this Royal Arm is active, they take an additional 1d8 slashing damage. Very deadly. Actively though, you cannot move the turn you use this feature. As an action, you can forego your normal attacks to warp strike as many creatures as you choose within 30 feet of you without taking the damage you usually would. Once used, this property cannot be used again until the next dawn. So you're vulnerable because you can't move, but equally you can teleport around to as many targets as you can see. Absolutely monstrous. 1d12, Trident of the Oracle. If you hit a creature with a melee attack while this Royal Arm is active, it produces an echo of your attack. The echo appears immediately and deals half the damage dealt by your initial attack to another creature within 15 feet of you. When you activate this Royal Arm using its active ability, you regain a first level spell slot. You can roll additional cost die to recover more spell slots. The spell slots can have a combined level that is equal to or less than the amount of damage die you roll. For example, if you roll 3 additional damage die taking you to 4d12 total, you can recover up to 4 levels worth of spell slots. You can recover either a 4th level spell slot or 2 second level spell slots, but none of those slots can be higher than 6, as with the Arcane Recovery feature from a wizard. And for 1d4, a measly 1d4, you can summon the Sword of the Father, and this doesn't have a passive effect, but actively, while this Royal Arm is active, all of your ability scores increase by 2, as does your maximum for those scores. It makes the great greater, as the flavor text says just there. So, thank you so much for watching. That rounds out our character build for Noctis. Someone's been asking me in the comments, can't quite remember who to start linking the characters in the description of the video. If I can do it this time around, I absolutely will. This will be down below. If you need to search for any of these items, you can search bracket NGTE bracket and you will find them, or I guess FFXV. Everything is labeled with that as well. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Natharandir's Guide to Everything. I hope you enjoyed this one. Put loads of work into it. Apologies that it's a few days late. Life happens. But again, thank you so much for watching. I look forward to chatting with any of you that are new. Please leave a comment down below what you want to see on the channel. I think that's it. See you next time, guys. Bye bye.